Well, Charles, Trump is back from his historic visit to China, and everybody is very interested to know what's going to happen next with Iran and all this crazy stuff. How are you doing?
Doing well, Jason. Hope you're well. The news reports I was scanning before coming on air here have Putin arriving in China momentarily on the heels of a massive attack by Ukraine into Russia, striking Moscow, and I think killing 4 people in Moscow, which has some people speculating that Putin is about to drop tactical nukes on Ukraine because he's had enough, and he's going to China to discuss this with Xi. Um, I do think, and I was talking to our mutual friend yesterday, and I do think Russia has been far more patient with the Europeans and this crooked embezzler and his crew of embezzlers, Zelensky. And I suspect that a ferocious response is coming soon from Russia, possibly hitting NATO assets outside Ukraine. Because if you look at I mean, this strike by Ukraine was massive, and it wasn't done alone. They don't have the military capability to do what they did without help. So somebody helped them. And the question is it just European powers, or might it have been American military assets enabling this attack? So that is a vector I'm watching carefully.
Why would the
Um,
U.S. do that now? It seems like Trump has been making overtures to Putin.
because nestled or in the middle of our military apparatus are many woke holdovers going back as far as Clinton. And a lot of people do not want to see Trump win here. And we've seen, for example, in the case of Barack Obama, uh, Todd Blanche was with Maria Bartiromo going over the grand conspiracy case, and multiple accounts that I watch on X are trying to set up the likelihood that Barack himself may be indicted and arrested. Um, so it, and Maria Bartiromo, actually, I was with her, interviewed by her quite a few times in 2008, 9, 10 timeframe. And when she gets a bug up her ass about something, she does not pull her punches. So she was pushing Todd Blanche around, saying, "Listen, my show in 2017 and 18, I was all over exposing this. Why is it taking so long? You know, what's the holdup?" And Blanche tried the arguments. Well, we need to do this through grand juries. They take time, and witnesses need to be interviewed. All kinds of excuses. It didn't seem to take much time to go after the January 6th defendants when Merrick Garland and Joe Biden, or somebody pretending to be Joe Biden, were pulling the strings back in that administration. They got right to it. I mean, January 6th happened, and how long did it take for people to get arrested? It was, weeks later.
Hours or days, yeah.
And many people were put directly into prison, right, pending their trials.
Charles, look at
So
this. Look at this ridiculous headline. Trump goon and Fox election nut thirst over bogus voting claims. That's a headline from a thing.
in what publication?
Daily Beast.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
The vehemence with which the mainstream press and the Biden administration attacked anybody who raised questions about the obviously dubious 2020 election results. I mean, if you go back I remember at the time, even Trump said, he was campaigning so aggressively. Biden was showing up. I forget if it was it must have been the 2020 election. Biden would show up at, Jeep dealerships with 5 people in them, and Trump would have these massive crowds. And it sure looked to me as if Biden was just dialing it in. And then the results had Trump winning on the election night, And once again, in the middle of the night, all these suspicious results came in with all the votes, enough votes needed for Biden to win key places coming in precisely mathematically in his favor. And the end result being in 2020 that Joe Biden scored far more votes than Barack Obama ever scored. It was a ludicrous result. And at the time, I remember when Brett Baer called Arizona, and seconds later, cowbells were ringing, and you and I went all over New York City, marveling at these crazed people who are actually happy to replace Donald Trump with a moron, two morons. Biden and Kamala. I mean, just the exaltation, the glee, the cars tooting their horns, people, dancing in the streets with happiness in New York. It amazed me.
Yeah.
It scared me, actually. Thinking back, it scares me that people could have been that deluded. And then, the attack against Giuliani was merciless, nearly killed him, his health problems. The attacks against Sidney Powell, the attack on John Eastman. I mean, this is far, it's just indefensible what they did. And now Blanche did say that they have evidence that 2020 was stolen. It's the acting attorney general of the United States saying that to Maria Bartiromo.
And all of this fake news, whether we call it fake news or social engineering, this is how they stipulate reality. They've just told people for so long that this is the way that it is, that so many people who, they listen to the news and they think this is telling us facts. It's absurd to them to think that anything other than what the news is saying could possibly be true.
Well, and then, for those of us who've interacted with these anchors and been part of the process as guests, you see the same condition that you see in the House and the Senate, that these anchors are overwhelmed with stuff they have to do. They're never given enough staff, and they're basically told in their ear, cut this guest off, criticize this guest, dispute what the guest is saying, and then the problematic guest is never invited back.
There's something else happening, Charles. People have heard me say how the Jason Goodman channel has been restored, but there's been, for a long time, for many years, you and I have been doing this for almost 10 years, and social media, YouTube, X, Twitter, whatever, has been an avenue for us to get this information out. Even when the big following Jason Goodman channel was struck down, we used to have 200, 300, 400 viewers on these live shows. I'm looking right now, there's 55 people watching across all the YouTube channels right now. It's really unbelievable. And if it was just happening with me and my guests, I would say, well, I guess people are sick of me and sick of this show. But you hear everybody talking about reduced views, whether it's on YouTube, they just put out this, they didn't open source it, but they put out on GitHub for everybody to basically evaluate the X, AI algorithm. And I think what's happening is all these things are moving towards AI. So their ability to kind of curate and knock us out of the box seems to have changed recently.
Mm-hmm. But yet the topics that we're addressing are top of mind, looking at the aggregators and legacy media. I mean, legacy media is focused on Iran. They're focused on Ukraine. They're focused on the drama in Europe. And they're focused on, is Trump engaged in retribution and revenge here? Or is justice going to finally be served? Comey just gave an interview on legacy media where he said, be patient, give us 2.5 years and we'll get this done. As if the guy's indicted, and he's going on television saying, stand by, we'll get this done. Give me 2.5 years. I mean, how could he possibly believe that he has the SWAT to hold off the federal government for 2.5 years? I mean, playing cards does this man have? And I think the answer is, people. A partial part of the answer is when we go into the files that Comey had in his office when he was fired as FBI director. A number of them dealt, I believe, with the Clinton Foundation and topics that I think are animating a lot of what's going on here. I mean, to address those briefly, in the old days of government, of policemen and firemen, sanitation workers, if you kept your nose clean and did what you were told at the end of your tenure in the crucial years where they figure out your pension, you got a lot of overtime. And somebody who wasn't really making much money during his career could retire with, he or she could retire with more money than they generally made in an active period of service. And that's a reprehensible practice. It's a fraud, frankly, on the taxpayer. But it's happens throughout our country. It happens around the world. So presidents and the people who get rich off the post presidencies looked at this and said, "I got a better scheme than that." In a globalist era, the former president of the largest country on earth is going to be immensely marketable. And if nothing else, he can be a tool through which we can launder money and get money if needed to crucial campaigns. And the way we're going to do this is by creating these absurd presidential libraries, which we're going to say the one in Little Rock, I think, cost about $100 million, but on the books it's valued at $165 million. Obama's people, Hillary, by the time Hillary left in February 2013, Obama had won re-election. His people had to have known how crooked and dirty the Clinton Foundation was. By that time, the Clinton Foundation had scored well over $1 billion and had no authorized purposes other than in their documents, other than engaging in activities in Little Rock. So B-Rock and his people, Bob Bauer, others, said anything the Clintons can do, we can do worser or better, however you want to look at it. And now he's sitting on $1 billion in this Death Star. Jonathan Turley was in Chicago giving a speech in a hotel near that place, and he said something loomed over his hotel room. He has a picture on X, I think, of the Death Star in Chicago. So he looked at that and scored $1 billion, not to mention all these ridiculous book deals that somebody else wrote and business deals. And both sides are evidently doing this. Eric Trump has announced they're going to do a monster tower in Miami, which is going to be his library. And I hope they do it properly. So
I hope the same. I'm having a difficult time finding it on Google Earth. I put in Barack Obama Library, it didn't come up. I put in Jackson Park, it didn't come up.
I think he's a tad sensitive about it. But people on both sides of the aisle in the established parties. You look at that goon. Speaking of goons, John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader. I mean, he should just go ahead and switch to the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a disaster.
Yep. Basically, all of Congress is at this point. Do we know what's happening with Thomas Massie? He was hanging out with a lot of reprehensible clowns last night. Ryan Mata and Ivan Raiklin. Pretty bad.
Yeah, well, Massie and the polls are notoriously unreliable, but the poll I saw just now shows Massie losing. And again, I don't understand what Massie thinks he's doing here. He's not the president of the United States, and he represents a district. Where is it in Kentucky?
Yeah.
And he should serve the people of Kentucky. If he claims to be a Republican, there's a thin majority in the House of Republicans. So by being a pain in the ass, he's getting support. Apparently, he's getting a lot of support from Democrats. And that's suspicious as fuck.
Well, he's going against Trump.
Yeah, well, let him lose and live out his days as a loser. And go get a mansion in Costa Rica like Marjorie Taylor Greene, another loser.
I mean, he's really gained popularity by being against Israel and foreign aid and all that. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know that he's been any more effective at anything in Congress than anybody else. He made all kinds of promises about, releasing the January 6th videos, and they're all everybody's in there trying to be a social media influencer. You brought up Marjorie Taylor Greene. Something occurred to me, Charles. I think we've spoken about this before. Marjorie Taylor Greene was basically completely unknown before she went into Congress. Now she has 5.4 million followers on Twitter, and she's actively tweeting from this Twitter account that is former Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene. There really is a lot of value in a public media outlet with 5.4 million followers, and she should not be able to keep that. It should be locked as a legacy congressperson's account that is sealed off, that she's no longer allowed to access, and she should have to start her own media profile.
Exactly. Exactly. And not to mention, I mean, how does she afford a $5.4 million home in Costa Rica?
Well, I think she owned a construction company or something. I mean, I don't think she's broke. I'm not saying she shouldn't be allowed to earn money, but that just seems like, when you get elected to Congress, the idea is not to become a famous media pundit. It's to serve the nation and not, it's like a Norman, right? They're getting all these pecuniary benefits at our expense, and they're paid. Somebody else was complaining they're only making like 200 and something thousand dollars for.
That's a fake account, apparently.
Oh.
But I'm the one who brought it to your attention. But I saw afterwards, people correctly pointed out there is no district that is represented by somebody like that.
It's still a fair
Yeah.
criticism, though. I mean, they work less than bankers' hours. No offense. But they make a lot of money for working for us.
Well, yeah, I would say when you think about the economy, you've got to think about the private sector and the public sector. Public sector is unionized in the main. So it's going to be very tough to shrink the number of workers in the public sector in this new AI era unless you change the contracts. Now, John F. Kennedy was famously against public sector unions before they became a thing. I think they may have served a purpose in the era when public sector employees made less than their private sector counterparts, but now they make multiples when you consider pensions that are largely non-existent in the private sector or locked in the public sector. So when you look at the private sector and you say, how many people in the private sector, what percentage of the workforce earns a salary of 175,000 plus eventually a pension benefit, whatever that adds up? It's a very small percentage. Yes, there are people like Elon Musk who make $100 million an hour, but they're doing it because they're risking capital as well as, and they're entrepreneurs. But in the salaried workforce, very few people make a salary of $175,000 a year, and also then have the freedom to do side gigs, write books and this and that, and not declare as income all the support that you get as a congressman, the paid travel home to your district,
cocktail parties, dinners,
the amplification of your voice by the legacy media and in social media. So I actually think that the salaries should stay right where it is, and there should be term limits, not simply in the legislature, but also for judges.
Oh yeah, definitely for judges.
And more importantly, for staff members. I mean, you've got people in Washington, D.C. who've gotten to AOC's ear, which isn't hard. She's got the mind of a 2-year-old, and the attention span probably of a 4-year-old. But she's going around saying that in an interview recently that she doesn't want to be president. Presidents come and go. She wants to change the country. And that's the attitude of these staff people. The member has just got elected, but another election's coming up, and that person is going to be more dependent on me, and of course dependent on lobbyists and the swamp. So I'm the important person. The member just, and that mentality that people, staff members of the Fed are more powerful than the president, or some Justice Boasberg and start, fighting Trump as if he's an equal. All of that needs to be reset. And a simple way to reset it, I mean, enough of the pussyfooting. You and I, as you rightly point out, we will finish 10 years of programming together at the end of this month. And, over the course of doing that, we've discussed a lot of the topics that people are hot and bothered about today. We started discussing them in 2017. And how many people are implicated in this plot to get Trumpy? How deep is the rot? And I think it's very deep indeed.
Charles, speaking of Elon Musk and space, I don't know if you saw this, but Trump posted a picture of himself with the aliens. They love Marco Rubio. Obviously, this is, I think, fake.
Yeah.
It's a crazy thing for him to post, isn't it?
Are we sure he actually posted it?
It's, Truth Social.
That's funny.
Pretty funny, right?
Very funny.
So people are speculating that there's going to be some kind of alien disclosure. I mean, at this point, who would even believe it? You could literally have an alien come on stage with Trump at the White House, and I just don't know that they could present it in any way that would be believable.
Right. Well, somebody tweeted out in regards, I think, to Todd Blanche's claim that they have conclusive evidence that the election was rigged in 2020. Jim Acosta, of all people, said there is no such evidence. I mean, the guy was fired from CNN for promoting the hoax, and he's like one of those Japanese World War II soldiers who surfaces in the South Pacific in 1962, thinking the Japanese are still winning the war.
But how does he even think for a moment that he would have more evidence than, forget about what you think about Todd Blanche, the man. The guy's the Attorney General, the acting Attorney General of the United States. Jim Acosta thinks he has more definitive information than the AG?
Well, you see, I think people like Jim Acosta have back channels to staffers at the DOJ. And on the DOJ, and when I understand the way it works is, when you're trying to decide to go after somebody, there's a back and forth. People don't think you should do it, and people do think you do it, and then somebody makes the call. Well, the way this system works is the Democrats believe, and the woke people believe, that when decisions don't go their way, that doesn't matter. We're going to wait things out, and eventually we're going to win, and we'll just obstruct, delay. And Acosta who knows? He's probably married to somebody like that, or at least close to many people like that. And it seems to be a nonstop plot, and people on the left are, until now, pretty good at it, and people on the right are spineless.
They've got to do something. You pointed out, Charles, that somebody earlier today, Michael Francisi, had retweeted a post of mine about Andrew Weissman. I just don't understand why Weissman has not been indicted yet. I really, I guess maybe I have it in replies here, but there's just so much evidence that should be used to throw him in jail. I don't know what they're waiting for. Here we are. Here, Michael Francis has retweeted this Weissman post. 21,000 people saw it. Yeah, that is great. I mean, listen, anything that gets this in front of somebody who could do something about it is a very good thing. But for now, Charles, let's pause here, and we're going to head over to the First Amendment Forum. People who do appreciate this show can support it by becoming a sponsor. Go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You can also go to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or follow me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribe on there. I saw someone saying in the comments that there's nobody that they've seen who's been canceled and removed from social media as much as me. I think that's true. The best way to keep the show around is to become a sponsor. But we'll be back in 5 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Actually, I have something very interesting to show you, Charles. I want to get your input on this. I think you'll find it intriguing. Best to do on the First Amendment Forum.